This is Albourne Rancho, the Wallace Snuff House that was built in 1932 that belonged to Arthur K. Bourne. This is actually a year into restoration. This is a point at which I should have run out the door. This is the rose garden. We have 6,500 roses, and it really framed the landscape for the entire place. The ponds, there are 4 ponds in the gardens. We tried hiring a landscape designer, but it didn't seem to work out, so I became the informal landscape designer and gradually worked through the yards. This is the other side of the mansion. It's a Georgian Revival Southern style mansion. You can see the house before it's painted. This is a house after it's painted. The house was yellow and white, and now it's something called Riverbed with green shutters and white trim. This is what he called the pub, and what I decided was too dark, too dismal a place, and we turned it into the Casbah, which you're looking at right now. This was a long process of sanding for over 3 months. This is the wine cellar, and it was pretty barren. It holds 800 wine bottles, but this is actually a step up at this point, and this is the final result, which is an extension of the Casbah, a seating area as well as a storage area for wines. This is the pool room. This is the old paneling, but it's not very good paneling, so we took it to another stage. This is the plywood we placed over the paneling so nothing would be destroyed. It is an historic preservation. This is a room after the cloth has been put on the wall. It was sort of done along the veins of a Napoleon campaign room, a tent-like atmosphere. This is the staircase looking up from the bottom level. There are 3 levels to the house, and you're looking up at a restored fixture. This is the little study. This was Mr. Bourne's office, and it's a beautiful fruitwood study. This is the dining room. The dining room was the least challenging of rooms, but it still took a lot of sanding. All the floors were redone. This is the master suite bathroom, which was one of the biggest challenges, but you'll see through a progression of pictures of different areas, this is what you saw when you walked into the bathroom. A little shower, the toilet, which was exposed, which I didn't like. This is the beginning of rebuilding the shower area where the old jacuzzi tub was, and this is the final result of our renovation. This took a considerable amount of time. Almost all the wainscoting in the house was installed by us. Here is the symbol that you see very at the bottom of the stairs, and that symbol is repeated in the wrought iron work around the balconies. The balconies were a disaster. They had wood floors, so we replaced the wood floors. As you can see, it makes for a much cleaner look and is more consistent with what a southern plantation would have. Looking out, you see wrought iron that was restored and replaced by us. This is the master suite. The master suite was a deep fuchsia when I moved in, and a mess, and had very dark wood floors, so it was very unpleasant. This is a sitting room of the master suite. There are 2 fireplaces in it. All the shutters were put in by us, and the work was phenomenal. This is the guest room, and the guest room was done in what I read, which I didn't particularly care for. And now this is the finished product of the guest room, which is a much richer, more French look. This is the former bathroom and the dressing room. We sanded just everything because a poor paint job was done. And this is the bathroom once it's been restored. I tried to make all the tiling, the marble tiling, consistent with patterns original to the house. This is the nanny's room. The nanny's room was originally the entrance to the children's room, but they'd already reconfigured it, so we left it as it was. You can see that they'd used some rather inexpensive materials, and here is the completed nanny's room, which has a small Italian bed in it, and there's the new bathroom. The old bathroom was like this. before it was done, a tiny shower, a room that was sort of nondescript and lacked any real imagination. And here is the new nanny's bathroom with the wainscoting repeated and the marble tile patterns repeated. Here's the children's wing, and it was a very pale, I wouldn't call it dismal, but I would call it pale, poor paint job. Here's the new children's wing. It's a combination of The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland with small furniture for the kids. This is the boys' part of the children's wing, and because my grandsons are Navajo, we transformed it into a more an environment more conducive to who they were. And you can see that it has a teepee in it. This is cabinets in process. These cabinets were copies of Wallace Neff cabinets because the butler's pantry was a Wallace Neff cabineted butler's pantry, and they'd torn out that and put in a cheap kitchen, so we had to redo it, and this was the result. Here is the old butler's pantry. New sinks, granite tops, and a new paint job. This is the laundry room as we found it, which was quite a mess. Some cheap doors, poorly maintained, not painted. This is the new laundry room, and you can see we've put in the black and white tile, which is consistent with the architecture. This is the way the house looked from the angle from Verano Street. You can see the porches are in pretty bad shape. So we brick faced the porches. They were southern porches, very high and tall, and planted them, landscaped them with roses. This is the courtyard in front of the guest house, and a view of the house before the shutters and house were repainted. Here's a view afterwards. I created an English rose garden here with a mixture of roses and irises and lavender. This is the side. We tore down some very cheap buildings on the side of the house that the monks put in when they owned it. And this is the way it looked. This is the guest house after it's completed on the exterior. I added molding. We had to strip down the paint completely. Here's the back. Once again, the old paint, the wood was in poor repair and had to be redone. This is the new courtyard of the guest house, which we did in blue in honor of Frida Kahlo, because the guest house was modeled after a place I saw in Peru. The old kitchen, a mess, just a disaster, as was the rest of the guest house. It was 1,800 square feet, so tearing it down would have been a problem. But here is the new kitchen of the guest house, opening up the skylight. Here's one of the old bathrooms in the guest house. You can see what a disaster it was. There were splotches of paint. There was just a mess everywhere. All that green paint is gone. There's a new tub, new tiles, a little more rustic because it was based on a place I saw in Peru. Here's the old living room. It was actually a duplex, and we tore down a wall and opened it up to a large room, which you'll see in a moment, but it was a guest house for Mr. Bourne's guests. It was just a storage area until we were able to work on it, and here is the new guest house living room with the torn down wall. This is probably one of the most popular places on the ranch for people. Here's another bathroom. Our guest house has 3 bathrooms in the guest house that was restored, and the living room portion of the guest house where there was a very small window. Here it is again. So the window has been replaced by a larger window and a wooden window. We tried to be consistent with the period. This is the backyard behind the pool. There are 1.6 acres, so it was quite a landscaping job, but I wanted the pool to look less like a typical pool and more like a pool that a house like this would warrant. It's a lap pool. It's 50 feet long, 12 feet wide. Not that deep in the middle, 6.5 feet, but it does have a jacuzzi. And it has the safety factor of having raised edges. So here's an old picture of the guest house prior to its restoration. I actually put dental molding around the top to be consistent with the other house. You can see the house was just a lot of weeds and old trees, which were nice to have, but nonetheless, walkways. We put a ton of walkways in, and we tried to use as many original bricks as we could for historic value. Here is the new guest house with the landscaping and the gardens in bloom. And we kept the palm trees. Here is another view of the old gardens looking towards the east of the guest house. And there's the old schoolhouse. That's the first schoolhouse in Glendora, and the play yard, which we reconfigured. You can see it was just grass. Putting in sprinklers, there's so much detail you can't begin to understand it until you do it. And there's the new schoolhouse, the new play yard, and there's Noah's Ark, which is an aviary. I wanted a children's garden with imagination. This is the guest house after painting and prior to landscaping. You can see we've moved the swing set. This little schoolhouse dates back to about 1880 and was on the property with the original house that was here. These are just some charming shots, and these are some original bricks as well. Didn't want to lose anything that might be original. This was a popular play area, believe me. My granddaughters wreaked havoc in here playing school. Here's a side view of the house. We're looking at the east side of the house before it's been painted and before the porches have been brick-faced. And here's another view of it coming from another direction, but it's the same area, and you can see there's quite a difference. Didn't take me long to find the right paint at all. I just kept having them put different beige paints on the wall until we found the right one. This is the courtyard of the where the garage apartment is, and I turned this into an Asian garden. These are outbuildings, and this is the new Asian courtyard once it's been completed with cloud stones, and there's a Tai-Hu rock in it as well, and lots of Buddhas, a Buddha fountain, and another pond. Just a very quiet, lovely spot. Here is part of the backyard area, the north yard, and it's the beginning of the ponds, and here's the completion of the ponds. Started with one pond, and that wasn't quite symmetrically right, so I moved to another pond. And it's surrounded by lush plants, but to the west of it is a woodlands garden. All the gardens have a theme, and there are various symbolic plants and symbolic landscape features. This is a gazebo which I purchased from someone which came from India, and it had the arrow theme in it, which the house wrought iron did. So we began to lay out the gazebo to be consistent with other wrought iron areas. And here's a view from the gazebo as it's completed. You can see the lantern lights, which give off a low light as if they're candlelight. Now here's another view of the backyard before the pool is in. This is what was there before I finished landscaping it. This is an area of the yard, and I'd already begun landscaping around the borders. I wanted to put a barrier between the neighbors and myself as soon as possible. And this is actually before the last photo. And we had to repaint the walls and replaster the walls. Here's a walkway. It's a circular walkway. I tried to keep most walkways circular because it's good feng shui. And then it has a nice walking garden feel. It's really like a 19th century or 18th century pleasure garden that you can walk through and enjoy the fragrance and the beauty of the plants. Lots of citrus trees still on the property. It was a working citrus ranch. The ponds, the lily pads, we've even had a lotus bloom, which is good luck, so I'm hoping that means something. Here are just beautiful lily pads. Here's an overhead view of the estate, and you can see where our pool ends. Our pool looks smaller, even though it's a larger pool than the neighbors. Here's the front, the French rose garden. And you can see there are lion dogs that we purchased from China out in front, and they're guarding the household. Aristocrats did that in the 18th century in China. And that's it.